Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Damon Matthews, and I'm the Director of Cyber Operations at QIntel. QIntel is a threat intelligence company based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and provides innovative and continually evolving commercial solutions to our government partners. For the last 16 years, our government partners recognize us as a global leader in threat intelligence and government-grade solutions. This is done through patented technologies, our ever-expanding dataverse, and our people, whom are passionate and mission-focused. Our IC and DoD and federal law enforcement partners understand QIntel is a keystone asset who time and again provide critical support at the speed of relevance. This is possible because QIntel enhances our partners' agility by continuously improving our solution day to day. This includes data collection, data technology, and threat intelligence that they need at pace with our partners and the threats they face. At QIntel, we recognize that defending national interests at home to include critical infrastructure, financial, health, and utility sectors, as well as overseas with our IC and DoD partners against priority threats, takes time, flexibility, and adaptability to get an enduring and competitive edge. That is why it is vital that we in the private sector proactively enable the warfighter via quality data and technologies to take action at speed and scale relevant to the threats they face today as well in the future, instead of focusing on long and slow acquisition and contracting processes that often don't keep up with technology and the threats we face. That is why today, QIntel is very proud to sponsor today's panel. Thank you to our partners and everyone here for your efforts, and our gracious hosts, the Navy League and the Gaylord.
All right, thanks, Damon, appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. I think this is my 6th or so year moderating at CR Space, and it's the first time we've ever had walk-up music, so props to whoever came up with that idea. We appreciate it. We're glad you could join us here for the second day of CR Space this year. And this session for the next hour or so, we're going to talk about commercial off-the-shelf software, how the C services are using COTS solutions and why. And before we go down the panel here, I wanted to spend just a minute on the why piece. Because in preparing for this panel, one of the striking things to me as I thought about the why aspects is that those aspects are really not all that new. The benefits of leaning on commercial innovation have been really well understood in the military services for a very long time. And if you wanted to pick a date, you could point back to the Bill Perry memo from 1994, which you could argue was one of the first big pushes in DoD to move away from military unique technologies and embrace commercial ones. And to some degree, it's been a theme of every iteration of acquisition form since then. We got the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act. We have an explicit commercial item preference in the FAR. And if you don't like the FAR, there's OTAs. There's other ways to do things to buy what you need outside the FAR. So my point is there have been plenty of nudges in this direction over the years for a very long time. And I think what we're going to hear from our panelists today is how the C services have responded to that, what new nudges they're responding to, why COTS is especially critical right now, and how it relates to software specifically. So we are very fortunate to have experts with a variety of backgrounds and roles with us here today, from the policy setting perspective and the operational perspective and the industry perspective, and I'll just introduce them one by one, going down to my left. Jane Rathbun is the CIO at the Department of the Navy. Also with us is Lieutenant General Jerry Carter, the Deputy Commandant for Information at the Marine Corps. Vice Admiral Nathan Moore is the commander for the Atlantic area at the U.S. Coast Guard. He's that operational perspective I just mentioned. And also with us is Terry Murphy-Daugherty, the CEO at Gavini. We're going to do just a few minutes of opening remarks from each one of our panelists. We'll have a discussion up here for a few minutes once they've all said their piece a bit. I'd like to go to audience Q&A fairly early, so once you do have questions, feel free to start lining up at the mic. We'll do them live right at that mic in this aisle right here. So without further ado, Ms. Rathbun, please share with us what you have.
Good morning, and thank you so much for hosting and moderating, and thank you to the Navy League for sponsoring. Jane Rathman, Department of Navy CIO. This is I think I'm almost done with my second year in the role. Prior to that, I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Information Warfare and the Chief Technology Officer. And so talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart is something that we emphasize in our organization and are massive users of commercial technology in all aspects of the IT ecosystem and with our business mission area and even in our warfighting and readiness areas. And so it's critically important to being able to move at the speed of relevance, to be agile, to stay at least at pace with where technology is going. This is not something building our own from scratch really isn't going to get us where we need to be for the warfighter. And the pace at which technology is changing requires us to really strategically partner with all of industry to make sure that we are, one, helping to influence what industry is doing so that we get what we want right out of the box. Two, looking at our own way we do business and determining whether or not we can adjust our process. Probably the hardest thing for us to do is adjust our processes to take advantage of all the commercial technology. This is very true in the business mission area space. But I'm here to say that without the utilization of commercial technology, we would have not achieved zero trust in the Navy and Marine Corps IL5 platforms. It was a game changer for us to really adopt commercial technology. And there is no way forward other than with commercial technology.
Great, thank you. General, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, to you and the Navy League, really. Thanks for hosting it on the panel, but also talking about this very important issue. I want to also recognize the distinguished panelists. I'm honored to be here. And if I could, I'd just share a couple of thoughts from our perspective, Marine Corps, doubling down, Ms. Rathman, on what you said about commercial technology. So first, again, Jerry Carter, about 40 years in the Marine Corps, a little bit of enlisted time before I was commissioned as an officer. My background is intelligence, a lot of time in the special operation world. I assumed the seat as a Deputy Commandant for Information on 1 August, so just a couple months in the seat, and the very first day I got on the job, the Commandant gave me his guidance, and it was crystal clear. I'll just quickly summarize. He said, this portfolio that you have is pretty complex: intel, cyber, space, electronic warfare. And as we're on a journey for force design, you need to help us move faster. And on that journey, as you know, starting under the leadership of General Berger, continuing under our 39th Commandant's watch, General Smith, we've been on this journey of force design. And we're about 6 years into the process. And I have, as I said, the most complex piece of it, and that is really the technology piece of it. And as we look out on the future, the challenge is that, you know, Marines, we do things exceptionally well when it comes to responding to crisis, being that lethal force in readiness. But there are some things where we need help, and that's where industry comes in mind. And so the partnership that we think about on a day-to-day basis, not only with the coalition forces, the joint forces, but with industry, and that's where it comes to the commercial off-the-shelf technology that you can help us see ourselves more clearly. So again, a very important endeavor. We too are on that journey with you, but we're glad we're not going down that path alone.
Great, thanks, General. Admiral, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks, good morning. If you've read the program there and you've seen the bios, I'm certainly not the tech guy. As you mentioned, Jared, I'm not a software specialist in any way. I do oversee Coast Guard operations for the Atlantic side of the world, you know, sort of the Rocky Mountains, East Coast out to the forces we have in Bahrain. And so in that capacity, I can tell you sort of my perspective on what our operators use, what they need, and how we're positioning ourselves in the future, you know, through acquisition and implementation of these systems as it relates to commercial off-the-shelf. As you can imagine, the Coast Guard, we already use COTS technology across various business lines. We've done that for years, of course. Maybe a few examples quickly. You know, our financial management system, it's actually used throughout the department and other places in government, FIMSI. That replaces what was our existing accounting system for finance, procurement, and asset management services, and we've been using that for a couple years. We've got an enterprise project management solution system, which our research and development staff uses, our research and development command uses for their project work, and it's based on a Microsoft Enterprise project management suite. Direct Access, which is our human relations, it's actually a direct part of what is Oracle's PeopleSoft. That's a commercial product. If you work in HR, people know what that is. We've been using that for years for both active duty and our federal civilian contractors. They leverage that for all of our human resources, leave, payroll, assignments, all those kind of promotions. All that is done in PeopleSoft in Oracle. And then operationally, you know, things that I see every day, we certainly leverage sail drone software, autonomous vessels, surface vessels for border security and territorial integrity. Nothing's more important today as a priority to us than the ISR that those sail drones and the software associated with it provides us. We use proliferated low Earth orbit, that PLEO commercial software. That's Starlink, Starshield technology. It gives us all kinds of decision advantage, same as what we see across the sister services, of course. And then I thought maybe I'd quickly just mention ArcGIS. That's something that we've used to coordinate responses. The best example of that was when the Francis Scott Key Bridge came down about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, sorry, a little more than a year ago. You know, with our proximity to Baltimore and my staff in Portsmouth, ArcGIS was critical for us to create that common operating picture that we shared across federal, state, local, and industry stakeholders. That's actually part of the secret sauce for the Coast Guard is we don't do much anything by ourselves. We're not big enough to do much anything by ourselves, but our key is the integration and the authorities that we have under both Title 10 and Title 14 to work across those partners. So all that being said, you know, I certainly recognize that COTS technology and getting that technology into our partners' hands and into our own people's hands is not an easy process. There's global security threats, there's things and technology advances, there's operational demands and other things that continue to evolve, and so we've got to continue to leverage COTS in everything that we do. And the Coast Guard's doing some of that. I'm happy to answer questions about it, but to fulfill our commitment to the American people and accelerate the adoption of these secure state-of-the-art technologies, we've developed some high-velocity acquisition and contracting systems, and we're doing that right now. We're reducing administrative burden associated with the simplified acquisition process. We're eliminating some of the redundancies and sequential approvals that are needed to quickly get those things into our people's hands. And then we've dramatically accelerated our process for authority to operate from our own CIO. And that's something that we've recognized over the years that has actually slowed us down, and we're dramatically changing that process to shorten it. So I'm looking forward to the panel, looking forward to answering questions. I'm happy to answer questions about operations, that's what I usually do, but I'm here to talk about commercial off the shelf too, and happy to do that. Thank you very much, Jared.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Tara.
Great, thank you, Jared. Thank you to the Navy League for hosting, to my panelists. Wonderful to be here with you. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation too. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Gavini, we're a COTS company. We're specifically a defense software business, and our focus is actually on building software for parts of the Department of Defense that have never had commercial products for the jobs that they do before. Specifically for us, that's in the space of acquisition as well as logistics. And I love the examples you just gave, Admiral. You know, you talked about deploying PeopleSoft for HR. You talked about ArcGIS for geospatial analytic workflows. What Gavini is doing is we have set out to build first-class Silicon Valley-backed top-tier commercial software for people like item managers and the WISMs at DLA, and all of the program analysts, program managers, and the loggies and maintainers, and many, many, many other people in this ecosystem who, up until very recently, have had to rely on GOTS software or legacy databases, or most often spreadsheets or the tooling that they can put together themselves. Because despite the fact that DoD spends billions of dollars on exquisite military capabilities, which I believe is the right thing to do, and I hope we continue that. We then manage those exquisite capabilities with these really abysmally archaic ways. The result is, I think, what we're witnessing now, a total crisis of operational availability. We are reactive to problems that emanate from the industrial base rather than proactively managing our suppliers. And a lot of that is because of the lack of modern software, AI, data, the capabilities the rest of us rely on to do our jobs and exercise our crafts in really, really exceptional ways. So that's what we're doing, and I think what's exciting about this conversation today is it's actually different. The conversation has definitely changed over the past several years. You know, if we went back to Navy League a few years ago or AUSA or any of these events and we started talking about commercial off-the-shelf software, the conversation would be, should it exist? Should we be adopting it? Do commercial products meet the needs of the warfighters? And every single one of us up here so far is saying, oh no, that's yesterday's conversation. There is a resounding consensus that there is a place for it. I think there is a place for the exquisitely designed, not commercial software as well, but the consensus is that it has to be both. And indeed, that actually the bias should be towards starting with commercial. So it's not often in these conversations about acquisition reform and change and innovation in the defense space that we get to say the ball has really moved forward. But I think in this domain it certainly has, and I'm looking forward to the conversation to explore that more.
That's great, and I love where Tara left that, because it's a perfect lead into what I wanted to start to get into, which is a lot of what I mentioned in the setup here, which is long history here of policy, statutory, regulatory changes that have tried to encourage the adoption of COTS, but just creating the pathways doesn't make it so, right? Ms. Rathbun, you mentioned couldn't have gotten zero trust done without commercials. So I want to lean on your sort of deep background in acquisition here. What's the difference between, you know, having decades of policies and laws that encourage commercial adoption and being at a moment where it's acceptable to do it, not just acceptable, but you know, mandatory.
It's a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I love what you said. I do think we're at the next phase. We all use COTS, but what large language modeling and AI are going to do to the COTS market is really dramatically change what COTS means, in my opinion. If you listen to the Gartner Symposium 2 years ago, one of the things they said that struck me, because we are in the middle of potentially procuring a new financial management system, was large language modeling may make accounting systems, financial management systems, COTS, irrelevant, that you will be able to produce your financial statement just by using AI. And so, wow. I mean, that's something that we need to be cognizant of, that what this technology that's now becoming very relevant, very commercialized, is going to once again start changing how we interact with even COTS. So I mean, every vendor that comes to talk to me is talking about AI and how they've incorporated AI into their products. But it is really going to change again the way we deal with companies and work with companies and in our supply chain and ecosystem. COTS in Zero Trust was critical. We went with a suite, a security suite that was meant to work with the core tools, commercial tools that we were buying, and what it allowed us to do was get the man out of the middle, so we didn't have to grow our cybersecurity team to adopt this new Zero Trust platform. We leveraged the tools, we gave the cybersecurity teams capabilities that they'd never had before, and we really made them far more sophisticated than any other cybersecurity team in the Department of Defense pretty rapidly, and we are launching on doing that same thing for our classified ecosystem. We see the value of really looking and curating products that are meant to work together and meant to keep the man, the person, out of the middle of the automation, which gives us speed and gives us accuracy and frees up our analysts, our people to do analytic work and really more deeper learning. So I think that is one great advantage. I will say our Information Superior Vision 2.0, which is about optimize, secure, and decide. So it's all about data, it's all about cybersecurity, and it's all about making the right investments in modernizing, but modernizing with an eye towards effectiveness and efficiency. We've got this new administration, we've got the DOGE working with us, and they're focused on effective consumption of commercial software. Are we doing the best job we can in buying and utilizing the software that we have? So I think the Department of Defense spends like $5.2 billion on just software. How can we make sure that we're buying it effectively, getting the biggest bang for our buck out of that consumption?
Right. General Admiral, any other reflections on, the current moment about not just what makes this achievable right now, but the drive behind it and why you can actually do it and bring it into your formations?
Yeah, thanks. And let me just build off of Ms. Rathbun's comments and use my background intelligence and just talk about the threat. And we won't go into any great detail, but this audience certainly understands the operating environment in which we find ourselves today. The threat moves at the speed of war. And in many cases, the adversary will not push us to the level to get to high-end conflict. It is keep us in this persistent competition phase. And so when we look at, as we said, over the years, how things have changed, culturally, I think the individuals have to change as well and accept that it is not always a military solution, but we have to leverage some of these commercial technologies to help what I describe as see and sense and really make sense of the operating environment. And so we are on this journey where in the past, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, you pick the time frame, but it was all about the hardware, and it was all about going kinetic. And as we are on this journey to the future, now we find ourselves more focused, Ms. Rathbun, as you said, it is data-centric, and it is all about the software. And so this open architecture is what we want to do, keeping security in mind, keeping that in the forefront, modernizing our network to get to this high end where we really have a good situational awareness and an understanding of the environment. So that's the journey that the Marine Corps is on, really a different conversation and hard for warfighters that have been in the business of breaking things and really going kinetic to understand that, leverage that software and more specifically the commercial off-the-shelf technology to help us sense and make sense of the future operating environment.
Admiral, you mentioned a lot of examples in your opening. Any thoughts on what's made the Coast Guard a willing consumer of these technologies? Is it smallness? Is it a culture thing? What has made that allowed you to inculcate those things into your service?
Yeah, thank you. I think for us it's a matter of need, right? We are small and nimble, and that's part of our advantage. But I think in today's world, like what makes this so important for us today is the ability to reduce the time that it takes to bring software back online, keep an operational asset online with a vulnerability, and that's what COTS provides us. I mean, when we look at protecting, defending, controlling the maritime border of the United States, protecting the marine transportation system, which is threats to every major port in the United States, we need to be able to, in the face of vulnerabilities of software, get systems back up online within a day. And that's what COTS can provide us is the ability to actually test, certify, get authority to operate, get vulnerabilities patched and back online. And that's, I think in a traditional way of operating years ago where we did a lot of that work ourselves, it just would take too long today. So I think that the vulnerabilities are too intense, they're too many, and again, to be able to sort of control and defend the border of the United States today, the maritime border, we've got to be able to get systems back online faster.
I can actually give you another example to give yourself even more credit about what you're doing.
I would love if you would give me more credit.
Excellent. Your mission support organization uses ARC, And to that exact point about getting after issues, especially on the border, more quickly, the team implemented ARC in order to identify alternative suppliers. Previously, ARC is Gavini's software platform, so we're collaborating with the Coast Guard Mission Support Team, as I mentioned. So the identification of alternative suppliers in order to move quicker and solve some of these availability and readiness challenges, there was previously in the Coast Guard a 14-step process that was executed in order to identify a supplier. We automated that in the software down to one stroke. So one single activity for a user, and it drove a 95% reduction in that user's research time and an 85% reduction in cost on orders overall in the vendor ecosystem. So exactly to your point, you just have to have that focus, identify a clear problem. There's a commercial product that can solve it, and move out on it, and you get the real outcomes.
It's interesting, and you know, my sense is there's a lot of times when a military service will start off with a need that they sort of suspect a commercial product or solution can satisfy, but then they design a requirements process that, I won't say precludes that, but makes it less likely that that's the outcome you're going to get. Talk to me about how you design requirements, or maybe requirements isn't even the right word. Design a process that's going to yield you something that a commercial product or solution can actually fulfill and get you to results quickly.
Yeah, so I think you've hit on something. The traditional way of thinking very linearly, requirements, programming, planning, acquisition strategies, I think has changed significantly and has to change if we're going to move at the speed of relevance. I would say that in my portfolio, when I talk to folks, I'm like, I don't need requirements down, pardon my English, to that ass level of detail. What we need is kind of capability statement of what we want to achieve, what is the mission use case sets, stories that we're going after, and what are the processes. Well, no, don't tell me what your process is without looking at the technologies that you might bring to bear, because the technology, if we're going to do this right, if we're going to use commercial, we are not going to customize commercial. That's what we do very well. That is costly and that is unsustainable. And so getting to a point where we look at the product and see that the product, that we can adjust our processes to work the way the product is working, or if we don't have processes, and I will agree with you that the acquisition community is the cobbler's children have no shoes, because acquisition community spends no money really on developing acquisition tools that help them go faster. So how do you automate processes that have never been automated before, but do it in a way that doesn't take you down this long winding trail that ends up not with COTS, but with some grotesque monster that was based on COTS but isn't going to be sustainable. That is a big fear of mine. I see that over and over again happening, especially again in the business mission area. And it's a twofold problem. Part of it is us not understanding how to change, as you were talking about culture shifting. And then the other part of the problem is sometimes we get systems integrators that have worked with the government in the old way for so long that whatever the government says they do, and they don't push back and say, no, well, that's not how the software is intended to work. The software is intended to work this way. Can you change your process? And then we lack good governance in some places to make that happen effectively. And so I'm on this massive bandstand right now, especially in the business mission area, to change the way we look at delivering business capabilities, which are core to decision-making for every aspect of a department. So that's my soapbox on that topic.
It's a great soapbox.
So,
Yeah, can I just add, and I think all of us would agree, there are some situations where this very laborious process is necessary. What I'm talking about is, for a very exquisite capability, take the F-35. I mean, we don't want to take any shortcuts there.
nope.
Right? But in many cases where software can help us really get to the answer quickly, and we know that there are tools out there that will help us, that's where I would say that, yeah, we have to change. And I'll just add that Ms. Rathman talked about this linear approach. way too long. When we have warfighters that are going out to fight tonight. And so what I'm suggesting is there is this sort of spiral approach where you can have capability developers' requirements sitting next to warfighters, helping them to iterate and spin faster. We can't afford to take this 7 to 10-year journey.
That's exactly right. It is a left seat, right seat, operator, developer, industry partner in the back, all in the same car, driving together in the same direction.
Amen.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that comes along with this, you get faster acquisition times, theoretically, but in a lot of these cases, you're probably throwing away whatever you buy after a couple years because something else is coming in behind it that's going to be as or more operationally relevant. So how much of a culture change is that also, just to come around to the understanding that buying commercial also means we're going to refresh this stuff constantly. That's not a common thing in government, but how do you get there?
Well, that's again, the fundamental culture shift that needs to take place is that we need to be, so nothing is forever. Yes, it's expensive to modernize, and that's why you want to modernize with a bent towards doing it in a common way, like the way the commercial industry does for the processes that can be the same as the commercial industry. And so therefore, when you, in the future, hopefully we are in the process of what I'll call evergreening and continuously evolving our capability along with the software that's continuously being evergreen. Evergreen is the term, I don't know if people use it still, but the term of your software is continuously updated. There's no longer this idea of versioning happening. And so you want to make sure that your IT ecosystem can support that kind of continuous evolution and that your workforce can support that. And so, and your processes can support that. So I think the average lifespan of like a financial management system is something like 10 years, and then it gets a huge upgrade from the company. And then we have to adjust our processes. We're going to be going through that right now. The Navy has, the Marine Corps has already done it, and it was very painful, but they got their clean audit and did it in record time, I believe. The Navy's going to do the same thing, but we're going to take a very old version of the software that we customize the crap out of and move to a state where, no, we're not customizing, we're going to use it as it was intended to be used. And that, if we don't do that, we will be in this state again of having really old software that hasn't kept pace with what's happening in the industry.
Any other thoughts from our panel on this idea of, you know, evergreening, as Ms. Rathbun said, continuous refreshing, bringing on the latest and greatest?
Yeah, from the industry perspective, I would say, you know, this is where the open architecture becomes so important. So if you're talking about weapon systems and platforms, that open architecture should allow you to be able to rip tech out that's outdated and insert new, better alternatives on a continuous basis. And we're seeing that work really well in the Army's Next Generation Command and Control program. So Gavini is partnered with Palantir and Anduril, where each of us has an element of one integrated common operating picture. And so, for example, our product is the sustainment application, and as rounds are being expended on the battlefield and you see that take place in the fires and maneuvers platform, the data is automatically refreshing for the logistics officers in our platform. That underpinning, the architecture that makes that data resync seamlessly and the picture truly common is all Army owned. And that was actually an idea that we industry brought to the Army and said, you have to own the stitching. That's what's going to allow you to take us out and put somebody else in with moderate and reasonable, acceptable switching costs should you want to in the future. And then on the business system side, Equally important, but I think it looks a little bit different. And Jane, I completely agree with all of your points. In addition to not falling into a trap of customizing something that started as a kernel of commercial, the other thing that the department has to stop doing is hiring consulting companies to actually spend 80% of the project budget, the overall program budget, writing code to stitch together a bunch of commercial products. That is not COTS. That is a Frankenstein. And so part of, I think, making continued progress in this space is to stop doing the things that we used to do or have been doing for a long time that are no longer necessary and are no longer working. And so I think shifting away from that mindset of just because I, plugged in a, data management platform that's commercial, or I bought a commercial dashboarding capability and stuck that on top of my otherwise custom-built solution. That isn't what right looks like anymore, and that'll take discipline, I think, to change.
And could I just also, I love the fact that you said we have to stop doing some things. And I'll just look inward at the Marine Corps. And Commandant Berger made some very strategic high-level decisions. Stop doing this in order to get there. No more tanks and some other things. But the other thing I would just say, looking inward, is we have the conversation within the service about our program of records. And what I'm talking about, if they are not meeting the mail, and we know that there is a commercial solution out there that can help us go faster, then in my opinion, we should have the courage to stop doing some things and invest in other things.
And I would say that the proliferated low Earth orbit investment is a perfect example of that. Like, we don't really need potentially, we will have military satellites, but the kinds of satellites and why we have them will be for those exquisite use cases that should, for intel, things like that, that should be unique. But for command and control, comms, operational resiliency, PLEO, and other satellite layers offer, commercial satellite layers offer us capability that we didn't have before. And we've actually been able to work with those companies and get them to design things into their core product. I don't come to them with a set of requirements because then I have to do an RFP, but I can have a conversation with them about desirements. And we do this not just with PLEO, but with other companies too. And get them to design upfront in their core commercial product things that are going to work for military unique missions. And I think that is also a switch in thinking about our relationship with industry. We're about to do the same thing, or we're starting to do the same thing for post-quantum resistant encryption. Like, there are going to be things that need to be true in a commercial product for it to work in the military space with this kind of encryption. And so we will need to have conversations upfront with industry, with our big cloud providers, all the way down to people selling post-quantum resistant encryption capabilities about what their capabilities actually need to be able to do in order to do business with us.
We are past our halfway point already, so just want to remind everybody, if you do have a question, please feel free to come up to the mic. I'll call on you. But we'll keep talking here too. I want to talk about scale a little bit, and to what extent you have found challenges and solutions to scaling commercial software products that maybe have never been rolled out to as many users as any of you three have. This is a challenge I hear about from folks in DoD all the time who see something that's really appealing. They ask the vendor, okay, how can I do this for 200,000 seats? And they can't quite get there. So how much of that is on the government to help them through that, to make that happen, to make their, so far not really scaled product scalable? And, I'll just throw it open. What are some successful ways to do that you've seen?
I would say fire that company. Run in the other direction. I mean, if you're talking about software, the beauty of what the cloud brought us is scalability. And so this is where the cost efficiency comes in as well. This is what I think is really heartbreaking in terms of what the Navy and DoD miss out on is we know in the Department of Defense, and I spent my time working in the Pentagon, so I'm guilty of this too, we love us some pilots, and we will pilot all day long. But it is hard to make that decision to scale to 200,000 seats. But you don't get the cost benefit without it, because in a SaaS world, it takes zero marginal effort or cost for me to deploy our software to 200,000 people as it does to 2 people or 20 people or 200 people. And that's the benefit that's inherent in these commercial products that the department's really missing out on. Now, there is, of course, a question of, well, how do you support 200,000 users? And one of the things that came up earlier that I love is, we as a company, and I think any good commercial product company wants to be with those users because I want that feedback. I want to know, where are you hitting friction in that process? Where does something not make sense? Heck, tell me if you think the button should be on the other side. And to one of the points that you made earlier, ma'am, I want all that feedback. I might not take it all, because that's the beauty of a commercial product. I might say, I understand what you're asking me for, but the inherent nature of a product manager's job is to know what you need and give you that instead. And this is where that iterative cycle of collaboration with the warfighters and the product companies, the developers, creates such phenomenal goodness, is when you can get them to really understand the problems that are being solved for, not the requirements, and then rapidly iterate on that out in a way that you can really test it. That's how you go fast and build great things.
I will say that we have challenged some big companies, Amazon and Microsoft, in a couple of cases where we needed to do something. We launched so quickly on something and it went out to so many people at the same time that, wait a second, we didn't really scale for that kind of deployment kinds of things. So we have, because we're so big, we have stress cases that are beneficial to those companies to learn from and to evolve their capability. I agree with you that software should be scalable, period, as long as your infrastructure that you're leveraging that software on can support, and that's often the problem. And I think that what we've been doing in the Department of Navy is our CTO and his team have developed this process called Horizons. And there's 3 horizons, there's really 4 horizons. Horizon 3 is about scouting and working with industry and seeing what's out there that could potentially solve a problem set for the Department of Navy. They have a whole process, quick access, business case, give us a business case, and then let's go pilot, but pilot for a very short time to determine whether or not this is going to be something that is useful. If it is, then we're going to move it to Horizon 2 and spend our RDT&E money figuring out how to fit it in our ecosystem and understanding the scalability. And then if it passes those tests and we decide, yeah, this is something we absolutely want to invest in, we move it to Horizon 1, which is operations and sustainment. But when we're doing that, we're also looking at what we can get rid of out of our ecosystem that just replaced, and that's our Horizon 0, and that's what we call cattle drive and getting rid of things that we don't need anymore. And so the scalability piece has to be tested in every application that we're buying. I mean, we're using commercial software for our Naval Identity Service. Some of those tools are stressed by the number of users that we have or we want to have. And so, again, it's a learning process. And that's, again, Tara, where the company has to be our partner, has to be sitting with us and saying, oh, you're going to do it this way. Well, if you're going to do it this way, here's the tweaks we need to make, or no, you probably should tweak your process in order to really leverage the value of this capability. So it's got to be that back and forth. It can't be a yes, ma'am, whatever you want, or yes, sir, whatever you want kind of relationship with industry, because that does a disservice to your product and it does a disservice to the service in not having something that's sustainable.
Terrific. Let's go to the audience. Sir, please.
Thank you. John Harper with Defense Scoop. I have a question for Ms. Rathbun and then another one for General Carter. You mentioned that DOGE is reviewing Navy software programs. I was wondering if your team in your office is working with DOGE on that, or if DOGE is doing its own kind of separate review and what the timeline for that might look like?
It's actually being led through the DoD CIO, and it is collaborative. I mean, they are asking for information from us. They are asking for information from the industry partners, and really understanding how we buy, how we consume, and how we could do it more effectively. Well, we are a large, in the Navy alone, Navy and Marine Corps alone, for example, Microsoft, we have over 800,000 licenses. Like, it's a big number, and so are we buying effectively? Are we utilizing the things that we're buying effectively? There's always opportunity for improvement, and I would say that's an area in my portfolio that I want to focus on, but have not a lot of people to do that, which is something that has always bothered me and I want to be doing better at. It's really this optimization concept. I've got to continuously modernize, but I have to do it in an optimal way. So if I'm not really good at FinOps, which we are making strides in financial operations big time, but if I cannot really actively manage my consumption of these capabilities in an effective way, then I am not going to be optimizing my utilization.
Thank you. And General, a few months ago, I know you issued a directive to the various Marine Corps commands about generative AI and encouraging them to set up cells or task forces. And I was wondering if you could give us an update on that process and also maybe talk about how COTS software plays into your vision for how the Marine Corps can adopt Gen AI.
I think I understood the question about generative AI, but can you give me a little bit more context?
Sure. It was my understanding that a few months ago you issued a directive kind of encouraging the Marine Corps to use that and having the various commands set up cells or task forces to look at use cases. And I was wondering if you could give us an update on kind of where things stand with that process, but also how COTS software kind of plays into your bigger vision for how the Marine Corps can adopt generative AI.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So first and foremost, again, based on Ms. Rathman's leadership and some of the things that she has done at her level, that is getting a strategy on the street first. And then our deal is the implementation plan at the Navy and Marine Corps. And as we look at that, as you pointed out, we're encouraging how can we move faster by leveraging the warfighter to help us go through this process. And so down at 1 MEF, 2 MEF, we, as you said, put a directive out there and asked the teams through what we're standing up as an AI task force, certainly down at 2 MEF, to help get some of those best business practices and tools and capabilities into the hands of warfighters at the speed of now. The other thing I'd share with you is a couple of years ago, we stood up what we call is the Marine Corps Software Factory. That is an initiative where we put it down in Austin, Texas, right next to the Army's initiative to help leverage industry to really develop capabilities today to get in the warfighter's hand, and that is partnering with and using commercial solutions to really go there. And then the final thing is, again, we stood up a Marine Innovation Unit. That's going exceptionally well, and essentially we found out that we, like many others, have reserves. Their day job is actually with some great industry partners. And so that is really spread across the United States, and that's bringing some goodness into our ecosystem as well. But thanks for the question.
Probably ought to bring the Coast Guard in a little bit on the DOGE conversation as well, because you guys just had a contract cancellation yesterday, I think, that was assisted by the DOGE team. I know you're not an acquisition guy, but maybe you can speak a little bit to the importance of divestiture, of getting rid of things eventually, because you don't want your land area command center to be cluttered with 17 terminals for every user, one for each tool, I assume. Yeah,
I think the way I would talk about it is there was the question about scaling up 200,000 licenses. I would love to have the problem of having to get 200,000 of anything out to people. So we don't have that problem, but the trick that we deal with a lot is integration, right? I think is what you're referring to, Jared. Like we have COTS systems that we bring on board, and then how do we integrate some of the legacy systems that we have? And we really like to create things ourselves and have our own little, we have 11 statutory missions, so there's a lot of unique features of what our people are doing all over the world. And so we have a lot of systems that we've gotten used to over time, some of them created within the Coast Guard, within the service. And so our challenge is always to integrate a COTS system and get the information fed in from some of these legacy systems. And then when you can't do that, which often is the case, you just can't, then getting the decision made to kill that off has become very difficult because we just are so attached to them. And so that's kind of what I think when we think about efficiency and how we can do this better, that's kind of where we need to go, I think, as a service is be able to make some hard decisions about things that legacy systems that we can live without. That's what you're seeing. And the announcement yesterday is an example of that.
Great. Hi.
Hi. Thank you all for a wonderful discussion so far. My name is Hannah Green-Spada. I direct the Building the Base podcast with Lauren Bajula and Hondo Gertz, and I'm a proud wife of an active duty naval aviator. So thank you all for your important work. My question is for Ms. Murphy-Doherty. We spoke a lot about how there's been an evolution from linear development and this sort of paternalistic, COTS off the shelf handover of technology to co-creating and developing the tech roadmap with a lot of feedback from the end user. You make it sound pretty easy, frankly, and I know it's quite a complex thing to master. So curious how that works tactically. When you're assembling an engineering team, are you forward deploying them in the building? Are you, and then also just from a talent standpoint, how are you attracting this top tech talent? Because we all know that our solutions are only as good as the talent that is developing them. How are you developing this top tech talent? Are you finding that they are driven by the mission of patriotism? And how are you nurturing that feedback loop with the end user?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the talent piece because it's the most important and it underpins everything else. The mission is our #1 recruiting mechanism. When we started Gavini, it was imperative that we be not just a mission-driven organization, but like really authentically one. And I think that, at the time, I thought that was important because coming out of public service myself, I thought if you don't understand that at the end of the day, these people work so hard, they're so smart, they all have other alternatives, and they show up every single day for the United States of America, then you can't ever really be a good partner to them. And it's, 7 years later now that you're having me reflect on it very thoughtfully, I am realizing it actually has served us very well as a company too, because it has been anything but easy. I'll give you one small example. We are 37 months into waiting for our Navy ATO. Anybody who is more focused on the bottom line than the mission would quit. My investors have said, are you sure this is the right thing to do? And I've said it is, and we will figure it out, and we will continue to work with our stakeholders to try and get there. But it has to be the divining rod. And then there are other attributes, I think, to just creating an organization where highly talented people feel like they can thrive. And that's sort of the ethos of the company. So in terms of how the evolution has happened, and I think this is true across defense tech as well, not just for Gavini, I think the big shift that precipitated all of this was the idea that there is a defense market for commercial products. And the distinction is that this commercial product is born out of our company's point of view. It's our thesis, and for Gavini, this is very true. I remember standing at whiteboards and saying, but all of the PEOs, they don't have anything but spreadsheets. And DoD keeps spending money on them, but they just send more people to the programs. They never give them really great technology to do their jobs. That's the gap we can fill. That's the white space in the market. But just like Reid Hoffman says, You ship that product early, ship it while you're embarrassed it's so early, and get feedback as soon as you possibly can, and then you iterate. And so that dynamic of, it begins with our point of view, it has commerciality, we all have commercial customers to some extent, but you are embedded with that defense team, getting that user feedback and letting that help to guide, not dictate, but help to guide the future roadmap. That, I think, is the goal.
Fantastic, thank you.
It's going to be a tight squeeze, but I think we can get our last two in. That's probably going to have to be it after that. Please, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Ward, NSWC Dahlgren. It's nice to see you, from Oregon, from Stratton. My question is, so I am on a lower level of utilizing some of the COTS software as an engineer at Dahlgren, and my head explodes every time I wait for an email to send, and it freezes Outlook. And I know that there's a lot behind the curtain, but my question is there automation to record the performance and feedback for users to improve this software?
Are you talking about your Microsoft suite?
Yes.
Yes, we do have software, both the Navy and Marine Corps have software deployed on their system to evaluate customer experience. We've developed world-class alignment metrics that are about operational resiliency and customer experience, specifically, the time that you are frustrated with right now. We are fully aware of the problem set that affects a good chunk of our customer base, and we are moving to Nautilus by September of this year, and so a lot of the things you're frustrated with should be addressed in that deployment of the most modern version and the most modern way to deliver that capability to you. So specific to your current frustration, we are monitoring. We would like to do more monitoring and really understand all corners of the department's experience. It is expensive to deploy that software everywhere, so we got a grant through a tech debt through OSD to put some licenses on, learn from those, and then figure out how to deploy those most effectively. And so I feel your pain. All I can say is help is coming, and that's not just a line.
Thank you.
Morning.
Thanks for all the insightful comments from the panel. My name is Jim Hill. I work for the Army Corps of Engineers. So I'd like all of you to look into the future. If you were all here on this stage a year from now, what would be a success story that you would like to be able to report on? We've already heard one from you. You would probably love to have that ATO from the Navy in place. But if you have any others, I'd be really interested. Thank you.
Great question. Y'all want to go down? Good.
Sure, I'm happy to start at this end and be brief. Let's hope it doesn't take a year. Honestly, I have to bring up the industrial base. I mean, we haven't talked about shipbuilding once. We haven't talked about submarines. And in this room, in this venue, I think that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity to go faster in this domain by leveraging COTS. When you zoom out and think about the opportunity to apply some of what has historically been thought of as supply chain or logistics, and then break over here the warfighter, in reality, it's all connected. The kill chain and the supply chain aren't disparate activities. If from a software perspective, we can get data moving more rapidly through that ecosystem, we can, I believe, act as a catalyst in the industrial base to create manufacturing capacity where it doesn't exist, to more rapidly identify opportunities for additive manufacturing and advanced manufacturing alternatives, and simply to get more of what the Navy needs in order to support the force structure demands.
I would love to come back here and see if you, you know, a year from now, I'd love to come back and have a better sense of how COTS is helping us on maritime domain awareness. How can I deconflict recreational traffic versus cartel drug traffic flow or illegal migration flow, you know, on the southern border. You know, we have made strides there, and we have solutions that are in place, but with the scarce assets that we have, you know, both the cutters on the water and the aircraft in the air, you know, I think from an operational standpoint, if I had a better ability to sort of separate, you know, the wheat from the chaff on the, you know, especially outside of territorial seas, that's where, certainly from an operational standpoint, that would give us the best benefit I could possibly imagine. And we're making strides there. There are solutions that are coming, but a year from now, I sure hope we're farther down that journey.
Well, Jim, it's great to see you again, an old teammate that I served with for many years, and I appreciate the question. And I think what I'll do is just sort of build on what I see as a common theme about what I would like to see success look like in the future, and that is that we can sense and make sense of a threat before it materializes. Even though we got this very high-end military, United States we're super proud of, and in terms of lethality, we do it better than anyone on the planet. But the desire from a humanity standpoint is that we never really have to go to war. And so what I'm suggesting is leveraging the commercial technology that we talked about over the last hour to sense and make sense of the threat before it materializes. No longer do we have time to stare at a threat, mobilize a force, call up the reserves, get on ships, deploy overseas, pre-stage in Saudi Arabia, think 1991 or so, get the force set, and then go. We don't have that type of time the way information flows. So leveraging the commercial technology to help us really look out into the atmosphere, sense, make sense, in order to inform decisions is what success looks like for me.
Ms. Rathbun, you get our last minute.
So I'm going to just build on what you said. I mean, the goal here is to securely move information from anywhere to anywhere at the time of need and relevance, and not make the warfighter the integrator, right? So technology has the ability, all the pieces are there, right? The technology exists. It's how we architect it, put it together so that our warfighter doesn't have to be the integrator at the tactical edge, but actually has decision-worthy information. That is a goal that, it's been the goal, it's going to continue to be the goal. I see that we're getting closer and closer to that. In the next year, what we're going to do to enable that is get our warfighting, move our warfighting network to zero trust. And that is happening already in the Marine Corps, and it is happening in the Navy, and we will, with our strategic industry partners, get there. That's a core piece, fundamental piece to being able to do what I just said. And since Tara brought it up, first of all, I just found out that you've been waiting 37 months for your ATO this morning. I'm on the warpath with commercial technology and how long it's taking for ATOs. You're not the only one in the Navy in particular. And so that would be the other thing that will be fixed within the year.
All right. We nailed the time. Thank you all for coming. Please help me thank our panel.